Okay, I think we're all set to get going. Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for taking the time out of your day to join us for an update on the Billings Bypass project. We're appreciative of your willingness to participate in this new virtual platform. Though we'd much rather see all of your smiling faces in person, we recognize that the public is curious about how the project is going, and we're anxious to both provide you with a report on the status, as well as hear your perspectives on the proposed designs. Considering that, we'll use Zoom to get updates out for now and keep our fingers crossed that we'll be back to meeting in person soon. To that end, I'll go over a couple housekeeping items as we get started. Because the meeting is so well attended, we'll be fielding questions using the Q&A function. That's the button that looks like speech bubbles on the bottom of your screen. Questions that are applicable to the general public will be addressed live during the meeting. To be respectful of everyone's time, if your inquiry is specific to your property, a project team member will follow up with you directly in the next day or so. Please feel free to add any other comments that you wish to be heard by the project team using the same Q&A button. To have an accurate record of all of your feedback, we need to funnel all questions and comments through the Q&A function and won't be using the raise hand tool for today's meeting. Following the meeting, you're also welcome to offer thoughts and ask questions using the project hotline, email address, or physical address. We'll provide all of those at the end of the presentation. We will be accepting public comment related to this meeting for 30 days. Finally, it's important to note that this meeting is being recorded and will be added to the project website for future reference or for anyone that wasn't able to attend today. Now let's get this show on the road. So, introduction of the project team. We do have some MDT people presenting today. Rod Nelson is the district administrator. Fred Bente is on the call as project manager. Mike Taylor is our pre-construction engineer, and Mike Fabricius is the right-of-way supervisor. And then with Dowell, Doug Anderson is the design project manager, and my name is Lisa Olmsted. I am public involvement manager and your general point of contact. I will go ahead and pass things over to Rod to get things rolling.
Thank you, Lisa, and good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Rod Nelson. I'm the Billings District Administrator for the Montana Department of Transportation. Public involvement is a vital part of everything we do at MDT, so we are very appreciative of the opportunity today for sharing with you this very important project, and also you sharing with us your questions, comments, and concerns. Looking at the agenda for today's meeting, I wanted to start out by giving you a quick overview of the entire Billings Bypass project with the 6 different segments planned for construction. Then Doug Anderson will be presenting in more detail the Johnson Lane Interchange and the Railroad Overpass segments of the Billings Bypass. The entire presentation today should take about half an hour, and then we'll open up to questions, comments, and concerns. So the Billings Bypass project is led by MDT in cooperation with the Federal Highway Administration, Yellowstone County, and the City of Billings. The Montana Department of Transportation has contracted with Dowell to be the lead project engineer and public information coordinator, and with Morrison Merrily as the lead bridge engineer, while Coulson and Associates, along with Marvin and Associates, are performing the traffic engineering and operational analysis. The MDT has also contracted with LHC Incorporated and Granite Construction to guide us in the development of the Johnson Lane Interchange segment. As you can see on the screen, the Billings Bypass project consists of 6 individual segments of roadway. These 6 segments are planned to be constructed in the following order. Labeled number 1 on your screen is the reconstruction of 5 Mile Road and its extension to connect to Highway 312 to the north. This segment is currently under construction with Riverside Contracting and is expected to be completed and open to traffic this summer. The second segment to be constructed will be the Yellowstone River Bridge. This project was just awarded to Wadsworth Brothers for construction. Work is expected to begin on the bridge as early as this August and will take about 2 years to complete. The third segment to be constructed will be the Johnson Lane Interchange, with planned construction beginning in the year 2022. This project will probably last 2 construction seasons and will feature a diverging diamond interchange design, which will be the first in Montana, but certainly not the first in this country. Doug will speak in more detail on this segment in just a moment. The fourth segment is the railroad overpass. It begins on the southern end of the Yellowstone River Bridge and continues south with a bridge over the railroad tracks. We plan on constructing this segment in the year 2023. The fifth segment is planned for construction in about the year 2024 and is after both the Johnson Lane interchange and the railroad overpass are complete. This segment will construct the roadway between the Johnson Lane interchange and the railroad overpass. And last but not least, the sixth segment. We plan on constructing the segment of the bypass that runs parallel to Mary Street between 5 Mile Road and the Highway 312-87 intersection on Main Street in about the year 2025. So with that, Doug is going to speak with you in more detail about the Johnson Lane interchange segment and the railroad overpass segment of the bypass. Again, please don't hesitate to write us with any questions, comments, or concerns. In addition, if you prefer, you can also email the project team anytime after the meeting. The contact information will be shown at the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. Yeah, once again, this is Doug Anderson, the design project manager for Dowell. I guess I'm excited to present the Johnson Lane interchange and the railroad overpass segments to you today in some more detail. Some of this detail has been shared through some previous public meetings and also some of the other outreach activities that we've had, home improvement shows and things like that, but never in a setting like this. So we're excited to bring you some of that detail today. So let's start with the Johnson Lane interchange. Not only does it consist of the diverging diamond interchange kind of within the interchange proper, as Rod talked about, it also includes some of the surrounding road network as well. So to highlight what's on your screen here, hopefully everybody can see my cursor. We have the diverging diamond, which sits right here with the adjacent ramps and other interchange configuration in the darker lines there, but also some improvements on that outside network. So this here is Old Hardin Road. You see we'll do some widening and some extensions through there. Of course, an extension of Johnson Lane to the south, an extension of Cole Street as well here, and some modifications to the Beecraft intersection as it connects to Old Hardin. And then on the north side, we're realigning the north frontage road. Currently, the intersection with Old Hardin Road and Johnson Lane is right here. But to get proper spacing with some of the other signals and intersection configuration with the crossovers, the intersection had to be realigned up here. Now, another major point that I want to highlight today is what we're doing, or what we're proposing to do with the north frontage road on the east side of the interchange. Right now, the current plan and proposal is to allow access through Sandon Boulevard to Coulson Road, and for the interim, and then eventually as the new bypass is constructed through here, we'll have access to the frontage road via Sandon. And that will also involve a cul-de-sac and obliteration of the roadway here. Now, we have heard a lot of comments about this proposal of what's proposed on this quadrant here. We appreciate that feedback. That's exactly why we're here today. So more any comments, additional comments are more than welcome. We will be meeting after this public meeting about this quadrant further, and be reaching out to those that have reached out to us with final recommendations from there. So thank you again for your comments, and we'll continue to be in contact as we move forward. Another major highlight of this Johnson Lane interchange is actually the way it's going to be delivered. Traditional projects of this size are usually done through a design bid build process, which I would assume most people is familiar with, where construction plans are created, are finalized, all the right of way is secured, all the environmental utilities are all out of the way, and then the project is advertised for bids from contractors. The department, MDT would usually get a handful of bids from contractors, and a low bidder would be awarded the contract. Well, with this project, the state has elected to go with the CMGC process, which Rod mentioned earlier, which stands for Construction Manager General Contractor. In some states, it's also called the Construction Manager at Risk. But really what that does is it allows the department to bring on a contractor who's more qualified than potentially a low bidder. So they actually procure the contractor through a qualifications-based process. They had to submit proposals went through an interview process, and the best qualified contractor was on the team. And like Rod had said earlier, that's Granite Construction and LHC is involved in the process. So that allows for more collaboration and innovation. With this being an interchange with heavy traffic volumes, trucks, things like that, our traffic control and our construction sequencing is a major concern. And, the best folks to provide that input during the design process are contractors. So that was why it was chosen to go the CMGC route with the project delivery method for this interchange. And the other thing you might be thinking too, why, is there an issue potentially with the contractor making recommendations on design elements and potentially lining their own pockets? There is an open book policy with this program, and there's actually a third party that's hired to provide an independent construction cost estimate. And that person, that group is considered what they call an ICE, independent cost estimator. And they are also familiar with the area, they're familiar with the site, they're familiar with the design and the quantities that are used for construction. And they also develop their own construction cost estimate to make sure that the contractor that's currently on board is providing the best value to the department. If there is an agreement that's met, actually when the design is complete, the MDT has the option to actually advertise the project to just like they would in traditional design bid build and select the apparent low bidder. So a new process for MDT. They are trying it elsewhere in the state, but it is definitely very worthwhile on this project, just given all the complexities of it. Moving on now to some of the design elements. This project really is no different than any other project within MDT. And so we want to highlight some of the major design aspects. Certainly we won't cover all of them today, but the ones you see listed here on your screen, we want to cover. So jumping right into it, we'll talk about the traffic analysis and design. Being a DDI, we try to depict here on the screen the variations of blue here just depict what traffic is doing in the respective directions. And so, with the DDI, the traffic crosses over to what we would consider opposite side from our traditional driving patterns. And you can see that kind of depicted here, with the various colors and my cursor here. Everything else is generally just two-way traffic, as you would consider. If you can zoom in, or if you're able to see it, these numbers and these arrows correspond to the direction of travel and the number of lanes at that particular location, which is not necessary to get into that minute detail here, but it is, a kind of a high overview of what we've got going on. Now, if we were in a more of a kind of an in-person setting, we'd be showing some videos, and I'd probably wave my arms around a little bit about, how the DDI actually operates. Unfortunately, the Zoom platform doesn't allow for that. Just the videos get, can bog down the system and then get real herky-jerky. So provided the link here, you can go to the Billings Bypass website on the MDT website and see those traffic simulations of what that looks like. And it also pans around and zooms into some of the other locations. So as you probably recall as well, the traffic analysis was a tiered analysis. There was many configurations that were considered. Diverging diamond boiled to the top when it was all said and done. But not only did it focus on the interchange, but to make the interchange work as we would like it to work, we did have to make some modifications to some of the other street network, like I said earlier, and that's how the project limits are developed, as you see on the screen here. Now, for those that have been involved with the project for several years, it went through an extensive planning phase. In that phase, we were looking at what we were working on was an environmental impact statement. And through that, we look at the entire corridor for environmental compliance with the proposed construction that was anticipated. And this green kind of boundary that you see was the original thought for what the interchange limits were going to be as far as reconstruction goes. But as we got into the refined design, we realized that we extended outside of those previously determined limits. So part of our purpose here today is not only to share with you progress on the project, but also provide give you an opportunity to provide feedback to us such that we can be documented in the reevaluation of the corridor and the amendments that we'll have to do to the final record of decision. So we will be doing some additional environmental review of these areas, outside of the green boundaries that you see kind of at the extents of it, and then also soliciting comments and documenting those from the public. Moving on to road and bridge design, some neat elements here, of course, that we want to share with folks that may be of concern. It's no secret that there's two major truck stops at this interchange on the northwest and southwest quadrants. Of course, which invites a lot of trucks, and trucks are big and they can be scary to drive around. They can be scary to drive. They can, drive over curbs, things like that. So one thing that we take careful consideration of during our design is making sure lane widths, shoulder widths, curb placements, median placements, things like that can accommodate trucks. And not only just accommodate trucks, but also make sure that, all of us in our passenger vehicles who are, in the traffic with those trucks are comfortable as well. So we've taken a lot of that into consideration. Another major element that we have, of course, is replacing the current bridge structures. So this configuration is going to generally stay the same in terms of its layout. Currently, the interstate goes over the top of Johnson Lane. We're maintaining that configuration now. But as you can imagine, there's just 2-3 lanes on Johnson Lane, and we're widening it out with that wide median and the additional lane. So we need to replace those structures. Those structures, also for those that are familiar with the area, maybe even some truck drivers that are on the phone know that clearance out there is less than desirable, does not meet current standards. So we need to make sure we get that clearance. And through some careful evaluation, we've determined that it's best to keep the interstate at the grade that it's at now. And we're actually going to lower Johnson Lane about 2 to 3 feet to be able to get that clearance, which is fairly significant, but it is the best solution moving forward, given all of the other challenges that are out there in the field. So yeah, for the trucking community, the clearance will be much better. Hopefully there won't be any more nicks and dings and things like that on the bottom of that structure, as you can see out there today. The other thing too that I want to highlight too is some of the medians. There's quite a few medians that'll be out here. They will mostly be raised concrete medians. Within the diverging diamond kind of interchange property you see itself, there will be some fairly large medians that I'm kind of pointing out here on the screen. They do help with the guidance traffic, realizing that there's a lot of maneuvers here that may not be familiar with the traveling public, especially initially. So those medians will help with that. Also, there will be some medians along Old Hardin Road to also help with guiding traffic throughout the various lane configurations we have there. And of course, with our adverse weather that we get, those medians, help when we start getting snow cover. So quite a few medians will also be planned in this segment. And we can't just think about our cars and trucks out here. We want to make sure that all users are accounted for. And so we've been looking at what we want to do with make sure the pedestrians are safe and also cyclists can traverse through this segment. I know you can't see it really well on this screen, but the red lines there represent the sidewalks. For those folks that are along Old Hardin Road, there is quite a bit of sidewalk out there. It is somewhat, I'll say, discontinuous. There are some gaps in it. We are going to fill all that in and make sure that it is continuous within our project limits. We're conscientious of the connection there with the new path that's going in at Beecraft Lane. We're also connecting to that. And then one thing also that I want to highlight is how do we handle pedestrians in a crossover situation? So, traditionally sidewalks, of course, are on the outsides of the vehicular traffic, which you see most everywhere. But then as you approach the crossover, we actually will cross the pedestrian traffic will be guided to the center median, and then we'll be able to traverse through the interchange through the center median, protected by barriers, concrete barriers, so that an errant vehicle wouldn't strike a pedestrian. And most of the crossings, almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them, where the pedestrians will cross ramps, will be at signalized intersections. So additional safety benefit there as well. And cyclists too, there's two types of cyclists, right? There's folks that are comfortable with riding in the street. They will have shoulders, they will have the lanes that they can just join traffic and traverse through the interchange, but also the sidewalks and the path, the path through the the interchange will also be wide enough such that cyclists that aren't comfortable riding in traffic can get through the project limits safely and comfortably as well. Jumping into some of the what we call electrical considerations, there will be 9 new traffic signals, signalized intersections of sorts out here with this new configuration. It seems like a big number, but it's probably what you expect after you see this graphic here. I'm kind of working from the north and working our way south. There will be a signalized intersection with the North Frontage Road and Johnson Lane. Obviously, signals at the crossovers, as we cross traffic to the opposite side of the road. But then also, it may not be as apparent is for added safety, both for pedestrians and for the traffic. There will be traffic signals that will be controlling traffic that are coming off the interstate, on the ramps here and joining traffic. So that's why you see so many traffic signals kind of clustered at these terminal points here. And then also there is a signal currently here at Old Hart and Johnson. We'll be perpetuating that, but we do have to replace it since we are expanding that intersection and adding more lanes in each direction. And then also here at this Cole Street extension, with the amount of traffic that's anticipated through here, signal control is the best type of intersection control for those volumes. So yeah, adding all those up, that makes 9 different intersections that'll be signal controlled as part of this segment. And the other thing too that I want to highlight, both for pedestrian safety and for vehicular safety, is this segment will be lit. High efficiency LED luminaires will be used to light up this area. The full extents haven't been identified yet. We're currently working through that as we speak. I'm working with the department on how much we want to light, but like a lot of other intersections and interchanges, on the network, this will have street lights to make sure that all these obstacles are lit and that pedestrians and, like I said, vehicles are safe. I want to touch on utilities really quick. You probably, you heard me say, that we have, we're going to be lowering Johnson Lane 2 or 3 feet. The first thing that may come to mind is, whoa, wait a minute, what are you doing with all these utilities that are buried in there? And of course, with the widening too, there are, power poles and things like that have to get relocated. That's not lost on us. We've already had a handful of conversations, meetings and individual meetings with a lot of the utility owners, both public and private, about, our proposed plan here. And we will continue to stay in touch with them as we go through so that utilities can be relocated accordingly. It's always a moving target during the design. And so the earlier we coordinate and understand, potential needs on their end, plus, what we plan on doing from a design standpoint and construction standpoint will just will help everybody. So we haven't forgot about utilities, and we're going to continue to move forward with them.
Doug, before you move on, actually,
Sure.
I have one question. How far south on Johnson Lane will sidewalks be constructed?
Yeah, good question. So, oops, I'm going the wrong way. Jumping ahead of myself here. So for those that are familiar with the Lockwood area, I don't remember the business. I believe it's maybe Ace Hardware that has a sidewalk in front of it on this west side. We are right now proposing to continue the sidewalk south down and tie into that sidewalk that's there on that west side. And then on the east side as well, the plan is to continue sidewalk. There is no sidewalk on the east side that I recall. But we will extend it through our project limits such that in the future, if Johnson Lane ever expands with other developments, that sidewalk can be extended through. So it's a great question. Hopefully that answered your question, but we are planning to do sidewalk on both sides on Johnson Lane to the south and tie into the infrastructure on the west and provide opportunity to tie in on the east. Great question. Speed forward here. So last but certainly not least on this interchange segment is the right-of-way design and acquisition. So typically the way right-of-way generally goes is, of course, we try to get through as much of the design as we can so we can identify if we need right-of-way and how much right-of-way we need if we need it. And that's close to where we're at now. We're hoping to have a design generally complete, I'll say substantially complete by the end of this summer. Not bid documents ready by any means, but at least have a pretty good idea of what the final design will look like and the final construction limits will look like, such that this fall we can kick off some of our right-of-way acquisition activities. And so for those that are along the segments of the map there and maybe suspect that you will have, will be impacted by the construction, there will be teams from both Dow and MDT reaching out to you to start some of those discussions, and it will go on from there. We anticipate, hopefully it goes quick. There's a handful of properties that we would like to acquire to make this interchange work, but we're anticipating about a year to do that so that we can begin construction in the spring of 2022. So again, we are wrapping up the design and we'll be in close contact soon. I know Lisa's reached out to a handful of you already. I think she's tried to reach almost everybody that we potentially will have to impact, just to invite you to the meetings today, but also just start that conversation of what we're looking at. So that concludes the discussion of Johnson Lane Interchange. Again, questions, please post them in the Q&A and we will answer them either live or get back to you after the meeting.
Before we move on,
Directly?
actually, we have
Sure.
2 other questions regarding Johnson Lane that maybe we could address before we move on. Sue asked, how will drainage be controlled in the newly lowered area under the interchange on Johnson Lane?
Yeah, great question. Drainage, of course, is always a big concern when you do roadway design, and especially when you do road design that has curb on it, that doesn't allow the water to flow off the roadway. So there's a handful of elements that are going into this. We will be installing inlets with pipes that be able to drain out this system that way. And actually, you may be thinking if we lower the road that we're going to have a belly in there. For those that are familiar with like 6th Avenue underpass here, in Billings, that's actually not the case. There's actually quite a bit of grade out here. That the grade continually runs to the north, downhill towards the north. So we won't have a belly in the road design actually. So traditional inlets, pipes. We'll be using some of the median areas to store water as it conveys out. There is a kind of a natural drainage that flows through this area that we are perpetuating with pipes as well. So yeah, we don't want anybody thinking that we're going to potentially create a belly and have to put in pipes, pumps and pipes, and hopefully the pumps work when it does rain hard and those kind of things. We've got the beauty and the advantage of having some grade out here that also helps us. Great question.
Also, one more, with the medians in the DDI, will they have truck aprons to be able to drive on to make the corners of longer truck trailer traffic, like the truck aprons on a traffic circle?
Yeah, another great question. So we do have quite a bit of that out here, and the detail of the graphics we're showing today, doesn't get into that level of detail, but we absolutely do. We, of course, are looking at those trucks, and so we've got a handful of the turns out here that will have what we call a truck apron that's very similar to the truck aprons that you see on the roundabouts in town. Well, they will be stamped, they'll be colored different. It'll be discouraged for regular vehicular traffic from driving on them, but it does allow a truck with a longer extended trailer to traverse over the top of it. We also have some pedestrian considerations there because a lot of those locations we have a pedestrian path across it. So we also want to delineate where the pedestrian should be expected to be both from a driver's perspective and from a pedestrian's perspective. Again, great question.
And one more on Johnson Lane before we move on. How do you plan to detour traffic during construction? The people who normally exit using Beecraft and Old Hardin to the interchange.
Great. Yeah, another great question. So this is actually why we have the contractor on board to help us with some of this stuff. So as we, unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you today because it will depend on what the final design looks like. It will depend on, how efficiently they can construct the project, but it is something that is carefully considered. Some of the discussions that have happened so far is that the department has given the contractor some guidance in terms of how many lanes need to be maintained during construction, what can be closed, what can't be closed. And so as the final, as the design progresses, that is something the contractor is paying attention to, and we'll be communicating that out. With our public outreach efforts that we have on, planned for this project, that will be one of the number one things that we will make sure gets out to everybody is what to expect, not just at the time of construction, but in advance. So not only if you're a commuter coming through the area, if you're a business owner in the area that relies on that pass-by traffic, you will be informed of what to expect. And depending on the type of traffic you have, you can, warn your customers as well. So, yeah, please bear with us as we work through that. And we'll gladly share that information as it becomes available.
Okay, thank you.
Ready to move on?
Yes.
All right. So railroad overpass. Keep those comments coming on Johnson Lane interchange. We know that's a big deal. High profile area. Please keep those coming in. But let's jump over to railroad overpass real quick. Rod already kind of talked about the project limits, but I will just maybe kind of refresh everybody. This is the blue segment here. It's segment number 4 to go to construction as it's currently planned. It begins here at the southern end of the the Yellowstone River Bridge, which Rod mentioned just was awarded to Wadsworth Brothers. It will begin construction hopefully later this year. From there, it'll take off to the southeast. It'll run towards the railroad tracks, and then there will be a new structure that will span the railroad tracks and Coulson Road. And then, I guess start coming back down to grade and terminate just on the south end of the bridge. In the interim, there will be a temporary connection to Coulson so that, there is that continuous path from 5 Mile Road across the river over the tracks and down to Coulson Road as these other segments are also being constructed. So that's a general overview. Now, what this will look like when it is opened on day one, it'll be a 2-lane road, a 2-lane arterial with 2 12-foot lanes and 8-foot shoulders. But as many of you know, there is a potential that this area could get a lot more traffic. And so we are also planning for its expansion to 4 lanes, 2 in each direction. So that's what's displayed on this blue box down here, just 4 12-foot lanes with the 8-foot shoulders for that roadway. And for those that are familiar with the ground out there, the road, the final elevation of the road, the height of the road will be about 8 feet higher than the existing ground out there. So if you're trying to picture what this is going to look like, that's basically what it'll look like as it's running between the 2 bridges. Of course, as it has to go over once it gets on the bridge, it's going to be much higher. So we get the clearances over the railroad and the roads, things like that. But when it's running between the 2 bridges, it's roughly going to be about 8 feet on average above the existing ground. And the neat part of this one too is of course, the big structure that'll go over the top of the railroad and Coulson Road. So this is kind of standing, looking as you're, looking probably when you're standing to the north and east of the bridge, looking back towards town. This box here is Coulson Road that will be spanning. This is the existing railroad track that's out there now, which will obviously also be spanning and meeting the clearances of those 2 amenities. But also one thing that we've also been doing is coordinating with the TED, which I'll get into a little bit more about some of their future expansions, and also with Montana Rail Link. They're the manager and owner of this rail through here. So how, what their future track expansions are as well. So as you can see, we've got accommodations for some future tracks for this, with this structure. So we want to, again, collaborate with everybody in the community with large infrastructure projects like this to make sure that, we're meeting the needs of everybody. So that's what we've got looking here. And the other thing too that I want to mention as part of this structure, I don't have a good graphic for it on the screen, but the record of decision that was signed that authorized this project to move forward with design has some specific language in it about this structure. And it said that the structure was going to be built originally as a 2-lane, which it will be. But then as the project, as the traffic, I guess the volume of traffic elevates and traffic demands, the additional 4 lanes, a twin structure was going to be built next to it. Well, after careful consideration through our, refined design, we realized that, it's actually going to be better if we build a 2-lane structure, but has a substructure. So everything below the deck that can accommodate 4 lanes. So we wanted to share that with you today, that we are going to get in here and build the bridge, one time, at least a substructure with 2 lanes on it and the 8-foot shoulders. And then in the future, if as the traffic volumes come up, then the deck will be expanded to accommodate the 4 lanes. So kind of a neat development. I just want to share that with you. And if there's any comments on that, we would like to hear those as well. Last thing I'll say about the railroad overpass, like I mentioned a minute ago, was that the kind of the master planned, the TED infrastructure plan, I guess, that's out there. The map here that you see on the lower left is the boundaries of the TED properties. This yellow line here is our proposed bypass, so we're going right through it. And like I said earlier, we want to make sure that we understand what they plan on doing, make sure they understand what we plan on doing, and make sure if there's anything that we can do to help one another out, we can certainly do that. We've been working with the TED Advisory Committee with any infrastructure needs they may have. One thing, of course, they documented was the potential for some rail expansion so that the commercial industrial development park, if they've got any need for that rail, they've got accommodations underneath our bridge, and we don't inadvertently constrict them. So little success stories like that are continually going on. And of course, as that develop, they may need water and sewer and other things like that. So as we're tearing up the interchange, it's something that they can plan for as well if they want to come in and get some of their infrastructure updated as well. So yeah, it's been an ongoing coordination effort with them, but generally positive to date. And that, I guess, concludes my updates on those two segments. Again, all the other segments are in design phase, but these are the two that were kind of on the forefront of our minds. Are there any questions that?
We do have one question. Bryce asked, and so half of Bryce, your question is partially private property related. So we'll follow up with you directly regarding property specific. But he also asked, how are safety concerns for EMS being addressed if there is a train parked across Johnson Lane, accessing those businesses north off the railroad tracks?
How are the safety concerns for EMS being addressed if there is a train parked across Johnson Lane? Okay, good question. So I actually, failed to maybe mention this too. So the beauty of this railroad overpass structure as well is that it provides that connectivity to the other side without being inhibited by a train. So in this case, there is a private crossing that's there currently. There's one on Johnson, which will be perpetuated, but there's also one that's a little bit farther to the north and east that actually will be replaced by this structure. It'll go right over the top of that, so that can be removed. And the property owners now on the north side of the tracks, northwest, however you want to, I guess, look at that orientation, they have access to the bypass. So from an emergency services standpoint, that will be, probably likely the preferred route, especially if there's a train in the area that they can get on the new arterial, the new bypass arterial, get up and over the tracks and get down to wherever they need to be without, much delay, hopefully a lot less delay than having to wait for a train.
Okay. And if you do have any other questions, now is the time to type them into the Q&A plan. In the meantime, though, we have put all of our contact information up on the screen, the project website, the project email, the project hotline, and our physical address. And so all of those come directly to us, and we will respond as quickly as possible. And then it all is also worthy of note. Many of you are probably very familiar with the Vision Zero, but MDT's goal of Vision Zero steers everything they do and everything that we as consultants do, working towards 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries on Montana's roads. And so, of course, there's many ways that MDT works towards this goal, but there is also a 5th E, and that is everyone. And so as we go into this holiday weekend, we wanted to remind everyone to please drive safely and be careful as you drive through any construction areas that you may encounter. Slow down, drive cautiously, and be on the lookout for any workers in those work zones. Fines do double in work zones. And we do have one other question. Is this PowerPoint available online? Sue, yes. It will. We're actually recording the video, so we'll do a quick cleanup on it over the next couple days, early next week, and we'll get the whole video with all of the audio and Q&A posted to the project website. And so our team can linger for a few more minutes just to moderate the Q&A, but as we start seeing people drop off, we definitely want to offer a sincere thank you very much for joining us today and for all of your thoughtful questions, for all of the feedback. And like we mentioned before, we will be accepting comments and questions for the next 30 days related to this public meeting. That being said, you can always call the contact information, reach out via any of those applications throughout the entire duration of the project.
So we had another question come in, and the question is, what kind of erosion control BMPs are you looking at specifying throughout this project? And that's an interesting question. And the way that works is we'll have erosion control plans developed for each segment of the bypass prior to construction. And those erosion control plans will consist of a variety of different BMPs. It's hard to say today what that'll look like, but definitely will be something that's planned for and developed prior to construction.
Being that we haven't gotten any more questions, I think we're going to sign off and wish you all a very happy 4th of July, happy and safe 4th of July weekend. Thanks very much for your time today. We appreciate it.